So, so I should make the statement that we are meeting by Zoom because of the pandemic, and that this recording, last night I attended a meeting of the Board of Library Trustees, and Mary Ann made the statement, and she said the video would be available until the minutes were posted. So I don't know if that's the way it works, but just in case it is, it'll be available at least until the minutes are posted, and the minutes should be posted at our first meeting, after our first meeting in October. Something I have to look into.
News to me.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the way it is, because these videos are huge and the storage needs are great. So I've suggested that instead of saving the video, they just save the audio, although that would probably be fairly confusing. We had somewhere a transcript, and it was just completely impossible. I don't know if you saw it. We had people from the athletic club, and the transcript was just, impenetrable. So we have Melissa Warwick. Welcome. Tell us your story.
I was trying to get my video to work too. Oh, there we go.
There you go. Hi.
Hello. My story is I am a concerned parent and resident of Shutesbury.
Okay.
Welcome.
I thought I would come to the Board of Health meeting to see. I've actually never attended a Board of Health meeting, so this will be my first.
Cool.
Welcome. And it looks like Arlene's signing in too, Kat.
Yeah,
great.
I'm here.
That's perfect, because we have here Melissa Warwick, who is here as a concerned parent.
Oh, okay.
And I imagine she wants to talk to you.
Wait, concerned about like septic systems, or because I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
We all need a little humor right now.
Yeah.
So go on, Melissa.
Oh, just I guess my concern is with the Delta variant in being more concerning for children and the unvaccinated. How cases in the school, in the elementary school, are being handled. I just, again, I don't know how much you want me to say now, or, as the meeting gets going, or what, I can say the whole thing now, or.
Why don't you
go?
Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So as you know, there have been 2 cases at the elementary school already. One was in my daughter's class, and I only found out about it because of word of mouth. Parents were madly texting each other, concerned about who sat next to whom. Do you know who it is? Not that any of us wanted to know, the student's name to like ostracize, but just so that we could know, we have, all of us have other children. Like I have 3 children, 2 that can't be vaccinated, 1 in the high school that is vaccinated. So the concern is always like, all right, who's bringing what home to the unvaccinated children? And on the other side, when I heard about the case, we were scheduled to see my mother, who is 76. And so I, personally would really like to know, not details of the person, meaning the student, but I would like to know, yes, this was in your child's class, so that I, as a concerned person and who has always done more than the government has done as far as my family's safety and safety for the community. I mean, we've worn masks when it wasn't required, stayed away from things when it wasn't required. So because I knew that, and my mom lives in Conway, so she is part of our community as well, the greater community of the Pioneer Valley. Because I knew that it was in my daughter's class, we did see her, but we stayed outside, we didn't hug, and we wore masks. We made these decisions based on knowledge, that we had. If I hadn't known, it would have been more stressful for me. I might not have even allowed my kids to see my mom because I wouldn't have known. Or on the flip side, the even worse side, what if I had allowed them to see her and she had gotten sick? So I understand there's, talk of like HIPAA regulations, but that's, as far as I know, there's, we don't talk about HIPAA as an individual, or, it protects individual medical information and not, a class, So I have also heard like one of the reasons why the school is hesitant to even say a student's class, or, that is because we live in such a small community. But as I just mentioned, we do live in a small community. So within a couple hours, we had hearsay of, like just rumor instead of actual facts. So that's concern about what, the other thing that would be helpful in knowing is, when the student was tested, like, was the student tested 2 days prior to when he got the positive notice? And then everyone else was notified, because then that makes it different for when I, how many days out am I? When should I get my children tested, or me tested, or whatever? When should I look for symptoms, even if they're the mildest things at all? I mean, right now we're going on, my kids are nervous about going back to school. So they all have stomach aches. Their heads hurt. They're always tired. So it makes it really hard to parent, like, okay, am I being overprotective? Anyway, so that's that piece, meaning, both knowing that general class information and when the exposure might have been, et cetera. Oh my gosh, and I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
It happens to me all the time.
Oh, really?
Really? I was just well.
Just take your time.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Let's see. Oh, right. And so the other thing was the metrics that the school uses. And again, I understand that this is partially, or not partially, almost all driven by DESE. However, so again, knowing that it was my daughter in the 5th grade, that first case. So after finding out about it being in her grade, we had conversations about, seating arrangements and, how she felt about the class. So she is out of my 3, like, she's so careful about wearing her mask and hand washing and just personal hygiene. I feel very secure sending her into the world because I need to keep her mask up. And
Yes, good.
But she, came home and, was like, it was sort of dribbled out, like all the different things. And the most concerning thing was the outdoor piece of it. And then while inside, it seems like, they're maintaining 3 feet, which again, isn't necessarily the best. 6 feet is ideal. That the outdoor is sort of like all gloves are off, essentially. Like most kids don't wear masks. Like by most, I'm not talking about like 56% or whatever. I'm talking about like 80% of children are not wearing outside, and they're not, observing any sort of distance. I think her teacher in the class even had them do a game where they were shoulder to shoulder holding hands, because they were outside. Most of them weren't wearing masks. So none of that was taking into account into the who is a close contact, because if that was, they were all close contacts. They did this game where they were all like going under each other's arms. And again, like only 3 kids in that class of 18 were masked. My younger daughter, who's in 2nd grade, also said that at outdoor time, snack time, like she and her friend are sitting like this next to each other at snack time eating. So again, like you can't make this policy about contact exposure and all this and not take into account the whole day, especially when outside there's also multiple classes interacting with each other again. So it's very, again, hard as a parent, you know, especially if you're not going to say which class it is in, you need to say everybody's a close contact because they are not counting their outdoor exposure time at all. So those are my two,
Okay.
or more than two, but you know. Anyway,
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for bringing these things up. It is so complex. And I totally get it that families are concerned, highly concerned when they get this sort of word. So I have a couple of things to say. First of all, by DPH standards of what is the definition of a close contact, nothing outdoors is considered a close contact unless a person had direct contact with oral secretions, like they got coughed right in their face, or they shared a water bottle, or they kissed one another, or something like that. But short of that intimate contact with oral secretions, outdoor activities are not considered for anybody as close contact. So that drops out of the definition. And that may not sit comfortably with you. And I understand that, because I myself, if I were, say I were positive, or someone in my family were positive, and we were
Oops.
getting with anybody out, like way apart, just to be extra safe. So I am with you on that. I totally understand that concern. Like, wait a minute, how reliable is that? But when I have to stay and the school has to stay within these definitions of what is, I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere, and DESE and DPH draw the line, or the line that they do draw includes, if it's outdoors, they are not a close contact. Okay. So that can be part of that's my response to the concerns you've raised about that there's sort of a free-for-all going on outdoors, that there were outdoor games where they were shoulder to shoulder, and snack time sitting close to one another outdoors. Those all, though, conform to what DPH is saying is safe encounters with others. All right.
Can I just also add to the general feeling of, or knowledge, that really DESE's requirement of the 3 feet is so that kids can go back to school, because clearly if DC is still saying 6 feet, then I mean we just should be honest with each other and say that it's not it's not the safest thing. 6 feet is still this thing. And then a lot of these rules that DESE has put in place is because they don't have enough buildings to house students if they want them to be the safest distance apart. And that one of the things that I like or one of the things that attracted me to the elementary school is that we've always gone above and beyond what DESE requires, meaning we give arts that are better than normal public school physical education, better outside time that's better than normal, or, you know, the average public school. So that's, I guess, why I'm feeling like, you know, DESE is like a grade of C. You know, it's okay. It's fine. It passes. It's fine.
Right.
We should be giving our kids the A+, you know.
Okay. So you're right. It does pass. And as the school has consulted with this Board of Health around their protocols, and this Board of Health has found them to be conforming to DESE is asking, then we have not had grounds for telling them that their protocols are not up to snuff. So in other words, we have supported their protocols because they are conforming. And regarding the whole notification of parents with specific information about which class the source case was in, that also conforms with community standards. There is no other school within the supervisory union that is doing as much as SES is doing in terms of even sending out the general notification that you all got. Nobody in the union is sending out information that is class specific. And you're right, that is in place in order to protect privacy. And you're right that I understand that you are not asking for student specific identification. You just want to know a class. But the smaller the group size, the greater risk to confidentiality is that specific information, like class size. And we recognize that word of mouth is going to do its thing. The grapevine is going to do its thing, and people are going to hear. So we don't deceive ourselves into thinking that it's going to stop the information highway, but the school does not want to tread into that territory that might put at risk themselves, that because of the school's action would put at risk the identification of any particular student. There are some pretty mean things that can happen around infectious diseases. And it may be that the grapevine does its own thing, but the school does not want to be part of it. And we as Board of Health have supported their protocols. Their protocols are entirely in line with DESE and DPH. And we had no grounds to push back against the protocols that were proposed by the school. So they are where they are until DESE or DPH starts to advise otherwise.
Can I just say one other thing to that? That it's, I do understand that our school is already doing a little bit more than required by sending out a notification like that, meaning that other schools are using a dashboard, although being in the Amherst school system as well, I do know that we are now actually getting an email from them as well, saying that there is cases in high school, whatever. But, so again, I appreciate that they're doing a little more than what DESE is asking, but I also know, looking, nationally, that it's not really been enough, and that schools are having a hard time, and that pediatric units are having a hard time, that schools are closing, that, that hospitals are turning away patients that need other care, not just COVID care. And for me, and I know, I'm one of the fifth graders. My daughter is in school with her father is at Cooley as a PA. You may have heard from him. I don't know. But he, it's like trying to stop something before it starts, essentially. Like, do what we can now so that we can keep our kids in school. I want my kids to be in school. I want them to be safe, but I would love them to stay there because they're having a great time. And, so again, looking nationally at the numbers, it doesn't look good if we continue to take these other measures. Like, so why not be a leader?
I hear you. I guess all I can suggest is that you continue to convey this preference to the school. If the school were to say, all right, we want to do more, we want to now send out classroom specific information, we would not stop them from doing that. But because they came to us and said, we would like to have this, and the policy that they proposed is sound with regard to DESE and DPH guidance and community standards, that we as a Board of Health had no grounds to say, from a public health point of view, you must do something more. Okay. We make them do more. They can choose to do something more, and we wouldn't stop them. As far as, I'll speak for myself, but I think the rest of the board might agree. We would not stop them from going further, but we had no grounds to demand that they go further. Okay. And so the protocols they have in place are sound as defined by DESE and DPH, and a set of sort of community standards that are out there now.
So it sounds like then it's really school motivated, like even if the cases, were out of control, essentially, it wouldn't be your call to keep the school open or not.
It's a collaboration. If there were news coming to all local public health officials that said, we need to, your school is in this red zone and some different action needs to happen, then we would act on that. But that is not the case. So it is a collaboration. And right now we're in a position of deciding on response to COVID-19 scenarios, planning for responses to COVID-19 scenarios. And their plan, as it sits right now, is sound from a public health perspective. I deeply know that it does not meet every parent's need. I know that. And that there are a lot of emotional responses. There is a high level of, for good reasons, there is a high level of anxiety about COVID in schools. Everyone is trying to find the place that they can feel comfortable with this balance between their kids and in-school learning and getting back to being with their friends and teachers and their own safety at home. Everybody is trying to reach that balance, and it is a time of great anxiety and stress. And I know that. It's hard on everybody. So I'm sorry that you have gone through such anxious times lately. I really am.
And I appreciate you listening. I feel heard.
Yeah, it is. And I also want to say, here's another thing. And this is stuff I was going to bring up at this meeting at some point anyway. The landscape is changing in a lot of ways right now. There is an explosion of cases in Amherst right now. There are currently 375 people in isolation in Amherst and counting. Okay. There are school exposures going on, not a huge number, but there are some school exposures going on. And new on the landscape is home testing that people are doing, unwitnessed home testing that is turning up positives, with some people choosing not to reveal those to the school or to their local public health, that they for whatever reason don't want public health in their business, right? So there's going to be more and more and more of this going on. And it is going to change the landscape that we are all living with, so that we're going to see on the official reported landscape, a kind of tip of the iceberg type of thing. So what we are all going to do in our responses about our kids going to school, or us going and doing our grocery shopping, or going out to eat, or going to some crowded situation, this is all like, buckle up. This is changing. And you, Melissa, I'm sure your family knows it probably better than anybody else, with your husband being a PA at Cooley Dick. It's just, this is shifting in a big way. And
no, it wasn't my husband.
I'm sorry, not your
No,
husband.
it wasn't my husband.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It was a classmate's father.
Oh,
Yeah.
got it. Okay. Classmate's father, but I got the relationship wrong. But anyway, stuff is shifting, and our preferences for being notified about every encounter we pose some risk is also shifting. And I don't know what it's going to do to all of our individual decisions about what's safe and what's not safe. And I don't mean to keep you awake tonight by telling you that this stuff, but there is some tough stuff ahead of us. Really. And honestly, to not have been notified which class it was in at Shutesbury Elementary School is, and I don't mean to minimize that concern. I understand that concern. It's shared by a lot of people, but I think it's a part of a great big pot of uncertainty that is out there right now. You know what I mean?
I do, and I do know that, and I do know it is also, there's so much behind it, not just health, meaning it's the economy and people's, meaning physical health, I guess, and people's psychological almost blinders, like I need to get back to normal. I'm not gonna result of it. I did this already. I don't need to do anything else.
Right.
But yeah, so it is in some ways I totally understand, but also frustrating that, you know, the longer people ignore it, the longer it's going to go on. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just am
I
like,
know. I know.
the vaccine for the little kids.
Oh, I know. I know. I really appreciate your voice in this, but I am, I'll just reiterate, this Board of Health does not have grounds on which to insist that the school practice differently than what they're doing. They are practicing in accordance with, at least in accordance with, and in some ways in excess, you know, greater steps being taken than what is the standard that's out there.
And Melissa, Arlene is our official conduit to the school. So she is directly connected. Yeah. So we have deputized her in that role, and so she's always in communication with the nurse at the school and the administration.
And if any child at any time is identified as a close contact, that family will receive specific notification, not just general notification. And I understand that your confidence in that definition system is, you know, you don't have a high level of confidence in that system, and I hear you.
So Arlene, remind me, if a person is identified as a close contact, they go immediately into quarantine. Is that right?
They do.
Okay.
They do, because they're all by definition underage for vaccination. So none of them is exempt from quarantine. So yeah.
Okay.
And if that information is determined in the middle of a school day, parents are called to come get their kid right away.
Ah, good. So these close contacts aren't circulating around in the school, at least
No.
as soon as they are identified.
Correct.
To put things in a little bit stronger way, Melissa, I think that what Arlene is telling us is that this board is powerless to require anything more than what's being done now.
Arlene, the exception to that would be if there was any significant change, if there was like a significant outbreak in the school, right?
Yeah, if there was evidence of in-school transmission of the virus, then there would be different protocols followed. And honestly, I'd have to consult the documents that are out there to know immediately. I don't know off the top of my head what goes on then. But there has not been any evidence of in-school transmission.
That people have been infected outside the school and happen to be
Correct.
at school and have contacts who are then quarantined. But there's
Correct.
no evidence
Yep.
that there's been
And I know
any-
this is just anecdotal, but correct. There's been no transmission in school. And I know it's just anecdotal, but I will say also that is true about the Amherst Public Schools. There have been some cases that have exposed others in the school, but there has not been a single episode of in-school transmission.
That's a bit reassuring.
Yeah. And we hope, by the way, in both the Amherst system and in Shutesbury, we hope that it won't be too long before there is what's called a test and stay system in place. So the state is making this available in the form of rapid antigen tests that can be done in the school. But what it's meant to accommodate is close contacts, kids who were exposed in school, once this is in place, will be able to continue to attend school as if they participate in the program, which involves every morning for 7 straight mornings, although we know they're not all school days, that's defined differently, but every day for a 7-day period, they are tested when they first arrive at school. If they test negative, they can stay. If they test positive, obviously they go home. And so DPH rolled this out too late in the summer for most of the schools to accomplish the necessary training to put in place before school opens. So most systems, there's a lot of schools that are still in the process, and Shutesbury is one of them. The Amherst school system is another. They are working on the various steps to get there. And when it's there, then once there is a situation of an in-school exposure, those close contacts who were identified will be able to stay in school if they wish to, on the basis of an every morning rapid antigen test. And they can participate in school sports and whatnot. They can do stuff on the weekend with certain conditions being applied. And this would not, the situation Melissa is describing to us, because it was not an in-school exposure. The contacts would not have the test and stay available to them in this case. But, and Melissa, you might say, oh my God, if I knew my kid was a close contact, I'd be keeping them home no matter, and people could always do voluntary quarantine. But all I'm saying is that kids will be allowed to continue to come to school, even though they were a close contact, if they participate in a test and stay program. So that's on the horizon too. So everything's changing. Things are changing fast, and stay tuned.
And the test and stay isn't like the in-home testing. It's directly reported.
It's directly observed and done by trained
observed.
personnel, and it's documented.
Yeah.
Whereas the over-the-counter tests that are taken home from CVS or Walgreens or wherever you get them, those are unobserved tests, and they are. That's what I meant when I was saying that landscape is changing, because people are going to do those, and it's up to them whether they divulge the results or not. And there may be, and I've already heard, not Melissa, I do contact tracing work for the town of Amherst also. So when I say I've heard about, I mean down in Amherst, I've already gotten some reports of, self-revealed reports of positives, but which are not showing up in the database. And if that parent or person had chosen not to reveal the result, nobody would have heard. And those are, as unobserved tests, they don't meet the standard for people leaving quarantine early. It has to be an observed, documented test to leave quarantine on the early side. I think we are all the evolution of this pandemic is going to move more toward something comparable to what we've all done in terms of living with flu epidemic, flu season. And there may not be a sustainable, thorough contact tracing and notification program that makes it through this winter. I don't know, but I think my guess is we're all going to need to be living with less confidence about notifications in general. And I hate to say it because I don't, like I said, I don't mean to keep y'all awake tonight, but I think it's probably heading in that direction. Was there more that you had, Melissa? Keep your voice coming. Speak to the school committee about what you're feeling about this. Speak to the school administration about what you're feeling about this, and please keep in mind that they are under so much pressure from so many different directions. But keep your voice coming. Keep talking to us as you need to. But at this point, this is where we are with their decisions and their policies. Okay.
Thank you. Is it okay if I continue to sit in on the meeting just because I've never seen a Board of Health meeting?
Yeah, sure.
Of course.
Just stay and see what goes down.
Absolutely. We're not accustomed to guests, but
I know.
Right. Yeah.
And
No one's
Melissa,
in their PJs right now. I know.
and Melissa, I did the Kovac 50 on Sunday, and I was looking for you and didn't see you.
Oh, good job. No, I did the Greylock climb on Saturday.
Good for you. Oh my
Was
God.
not in any shape to do any Kovacking.
God bless you.
Well, I also want to thank you, Melissa, for coming to talk to us about this. We generally like to be able to help people out and send them away happy, but that's not what we can do tonight. But we're glad to have you here and to hear from you. So shall we move on with the meeting?
Sure.
I hope that like the power doesn't go out with this thunderstorm or something. So the first thing I would like to do is accept the minutes of the previous meeting. You've all seen copies of it. Were there any problems? Anything I left out?
move to approve.
Second.
Anybody not in favor? Okay, hearing no objections, we'll go with those. So we have a disposal works construction permit application for the parsonage. And they're putting in a new well, which is kind of, horrible because of course there's going to be PFAS in the well, no question about it. In fact, the well, I was telling Garrett this before the meeting started, the well that house uses is the same well that serves the fire station. And the well, there's a well right next to it that serves the house on the other side of the fire station. And so it's the same water and it's really, really contaminated. Charlie recommends approval of the septic design. As far as I recall, there were no local upgrades or variances. They were able to meet all the setbacks. The well is going to be in the front. I think it's going to meet the 25-foot setback, and if not, it's going to be pretty close to meeting it because it's back a little bit toward the house. And all the other setbacks are good. He's paid the fees. I don't have the well permit application in front of me, so we can't really approve it. What we can do tonight is approve the permit, the septic system permit in principle. It has still to go to Concom. So we normally hold these up. We don't issue them until Concom has issued their conditions or whatever's.
Mhm.
So can we give approval in principle to this septic system design,
To,
which
to
Charlie likes?
septic only.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would move to approve.
okay. Can
Second.
I have, okay.
Second,
Anybody have a problem with our approving this?
I guess one thing that I wonder about a new well in a known contaminated area is how long it would take to show in testing that a new well is contaminated.
That would be interesting, and maybe they'll test it. I'll ask Caprice about that from DEP, if they would test it as soon as it's drilled and see if it's going to show up or not.
I mean, I would assume it would be a matter of time. It would take time to show concentrated levels in a new well.
Well, I don't know. It seems to me that if it's in the water in concentrated levels, it's not like it's accumulating, in the house or something, right? And of course, I don't even know what
Just
they
a
plan
random
to
thought
do.
about if it would show up immediately or not.
It would be good to know that, just as a thing to know. And of course, the town is going to be liable for it, and I think our Becky has already ordered a filter for them, and she's already provided bottled water for them and for the house on the other side.
Good.
I also was telling Garrett, you others, that we got some results from the DEP investigation, and some of them were actually non-detect. And there were some high results in the fire station area, but some of them weren't detected. And there were some over in the other site around Wendell and Locks Pond Road that were also not detected. I don't think there's any reason I could not send to you the lists. Basically, I'm keeping lists of what results we get where. And I'm happy to say that the longest of those lists is the one that's for non-detect.
Okay.
I had put 66 Lake Drive, the storm drain, on the agenda, forgetting that we talked about that last week. There's nothing new about that. It's in the hands of Concom now, and that's that. So I sent you 2 town hall COVID policies because Becky sent me one, which was the one I sent you in the morning, and then she told me that they had at the select board, they had edited it and added some stuff. So that was the second one. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about it or what.
The only thing that stood out to me was bullet number 3 under item number 4 for staff members who opt to not get vaccinated. Basically, it says town requires PCR COVID tests weekly. Negative results will need to be submitted. I assume that they're also going to want to know about positives.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I assume that they're not taking anything for granted. It's not, I'll tell you if I'm positive, and if you don't hear anything, no news is good news. If they want to hear all the results, but perhaps that should be made a little bit more explicit, like all
Testing.
results, positive and negative, must be reported. How does that sound?
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Any
I have
other
another,
suggestions? Yes.
well, I just have a question for Arlene. Does any, or maybe someone knows why they chose to have people tested once a week? I mean, I think some businesses and schools and private schools, for example, are testing more frequently. So my question is, Arlene, is once a week adequate?
For an asymptomatic population,
Okay.
I think so. Yeah. Testing, by the way, in our area right now is hard to come by. It's next to impossible to find an appointment for a rapid test, from what I understand. And currently the time to get your result from a PCR is about 4 days from either UMass or from HCC. So, and that could get worse before it
Yeah.
gets better.
Yeah, with all these testing mandates, it's sure to get worse.
Which is what part of what's going to drive more people to the over-the-counter kits, so long as they stay available. But yeah.
Right. Is there anything that you would suggest about this policy that you think should change because of that?
No, I don't think so.
It also seems pretty consistent with other ones that I've seen in other municipalities,
Okay.
especially in terms of the time off requirement and whether or not it's paid if you're vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
Presumably, if you're claiming a legitimate exemption, then those provisions wouldn't apply. But I don't really know how they're going to handle that. I mean, in the end, it seems to me it's nice they're asking our opinion, and we can add a thing or two, but really they can do what they want, I think.
And I guess the only other question I have is that it does state that proof of vaccination has to be submitted to the Board of Health.
Yeah.
So what are our protocols for managing that? And
For what was that verb? For what?
How are we gonna how do we want to handle that? If they're submitting, are they submitting to you as the clerk, Catherine? Do you want to have them submit to Arlene? And what is the purpose of them submitting it to us? Are we verifying through MIIS or?
Well, those are good questions. I have no idea why they, particularly picked on us. I mean, they can look at a vaccination card as well as anybody else can, unless they want it to be verified, which I'm not sure they're that suspicious. But let's ask why they want it submitted to us.
Yeah, and in what form do they want us to keep a log, of sorts? I have access to MIIS, and so if at any point we needed to check someone's vaccination status, that I could go into the system and find them, but would not want to have to do that on some sort of I'm not sure what they want either in that.
I mean, yeah, obviously
once
they want to show it. But.
Yeah, and as long as they were vaccinated in the state of Massachusetts, we'd be able to access that record, or I would be able to in MIIS. So.
Right, but you shouldn't have to do that. It shouldn't be our responsibility. I mean, it should be on the employee to show the vaccination card or show some other. And
evidence. In some personnel records, like I would wonder, has the personnel committee weighed in on this, and is there some role that they would better play than the Board of Health in this? Or is there some need for BOH and personnel committee to communicate with one another? Like personnel committee says, can you please confirm that this list of a roster of people has been vaccinated, and then I could do that, you know. But that would make more sense to me than having individuals submitting their pictures of their cards, you know.
Well,
I have
Just
one caveat to that. When I went to my physician's office and she looked it up in MIIS, she had no idea that I had been vaccinated, even though I had by a state, clinic.
Did she
So
find you in
she did
the
not.
system?
No, she did not.
What?
Nope. So that's
not
why
right.
I'm mentioning it. Nope.
Oh, huh. That's rough.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And as I said, I was vaccinated at a state clinic.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, obviously, if given the policy, there's a fair amount riding on people proving that they were vaccinated, but I'm not sure that they need to prove it to us. I mean, I think they're just saying the Board of Health, because they're the Board of Health, but it's not really our problem. I think that probably they should be submitting proof of vaccination to their department head.
Yeah. Just a lot at the same time they have to submit stuff like tax forms and
Right.
anything else that's
that aspect of verifying vaccination is more human resource function than it is.
Yeah.
Unless it's that they're asking for us to use the systems that the board has access to verify.
Right. And
Right.
it may be that that's the problem, that there is no HR for the town.
Yeah.
You know, unlike a larger agency or business.
Right. Yeah. I don't think that they are imagining that we'll verify it. I think they feel they can trust the employees to have the card or not. I think it's just kind of automatic. Oh, this is about health. Send it to the Board of Health. I don't want it. I think that each person should report to their department head, and those department heads should report to the select board. Right? It's not huge. I mean, the police chief can say, okay, all my people are vaccinated or not. Here are the ones who aren't, whatever. And that they keep those logs and that they turn them over for inspection by the select board. I don't see why we should be involved in that at all.
I agree.
And I agree.
So I'll bring this up to Becky tomorrow and suggest that be changed. In fact, I'll edit the document with our suggestions on that and on and how the results are supposed to be reported.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So the Shutesbury Athletic Club, they're starting to do meals again. I feel a little queasy about that. You know, when we talked to them months ago, things were looking very different, and they had all kinds of protocols in place. And we haven't heard a peep out of them recently, but they've started having Friday night meals. Does anybody know anything about it? No. I'm kind of wondering what we ought to do.
Based on what, Kat? Based on some different standards that are happening with respect to in-person dining?
I don't think, are there different standards now? Or just, I mean, everybody's being more anxious and more careful, and mask mandates are coming back and so on. It seems to me things are more restrictive now than they were at the time that we last spoke with them.
Yeah. The mask mandate that exists in Amherst has an exception for people who are dining or seated at a bar indoors.
Okay. Well, that would make sense if they're actually eating and drinking.
Sure, right.
I'm going to suggest that we contact them and ask them to tell us again what their safety protocols are,
Mhm,
given the increased cases in the area.
mhm.
Um,
I agree.
yeah. What do you think that we could do if we are uncomfortable with it? I'm not quite sure about our authority here. I mean, could we tell them stop doing those meals?
As I recall, the last time they came before the board, what they were doing was outdoor service, and it was largely pickup.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know what
And so I don't know if
what
they've
the setup
changed
is.
that.
Right. Well, that's what we need to find out. If I'd been smart, I'd have done it in time for us to talk about it at this meeting, but
Well,
wasn't.
what I've read most recently, and some of it is available on their website, but what I've read in some email feed that I get is that they were doing these dinners and that you could order in advance, and they wanted you to specify if you wanted it pick up. So in other words, the default was that they were assuming that you'd be eating there unless you specified otherwise. But that's all with respect to warm weather months of the year. And as you know, the nights are getting chillier, and there's only going to be so long that they're going to be able to continue realistically at outdoor food service. And so I think it is timely that we find out from them about what's going on.
Okay.
As to whether or not we have the authority to ask them to change things, if the what used to be called the reopening of Massachusetts is currently allowing restaurants and bars to be open for indoor service, I don't think we have grounds for making them do something different.
And are there still table separation requirements and so on that were imposed back?
Capacity requirements.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know that. I don't have that on the top of my head. But
I don't either. I haven't been going to those DPH Zooms where they were always talking about that.
right,
All right,
but
well,
the
I'll see what I
information's
can
out
find
there,
out.
but yeah.
Okay. The next thing on my list is update on COVID status, and it seems to me that you've done a pretty good job on that already. Arlene, do you have anything you want to add?
No, we have, where did I wrote it down and then I forgot to bring it in this room with me. But if I'm not mistaken, we have currently 4 cases in isolation, but 2 of them are about to end in the next day or 2, and 1 in quarantine. I'll double check that, Kat, and confirm it with you, but that's
Okay.
what's in my head.
Okay, yeah, if you'll do that, I guess we should start sending out weekly.
Yeah, and
notices
one of those is a home test person who voluntarily disclosed a positive result.
Oh, good.
And what I learned yesterday from DPH is that when we get these reports of unobserved tests done at home, they are saying we should not move forward with contact tracing on that case.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's the rationale behind that?
I think the recommendation for anyone getting a positive on a home test is to seek a confirmatory PCR, with the PCR being much more reliable and with the amount of room for error that there is on the home tests. That they don't want us to start shutting down, a swath of the community on the basis of so much less reliable home test. So they really want those people to get confirmatory PCRs.
Mhm.
Do they want those self-reported cases to go into Maven? Are they having you enter?
No. So before I learned this, there was a self-reported case that I got, and I communicated with DPH, and they reclassified the case in Maven. It had been an unclassified because of, past negative tests. They reclassified it to suspect. But what I learned yesterday is that they are not going to continue to do that, and they are not asking contact tracers to pursue these tests that are unsupported by a witnessed test. So it's just it's kind of nutty right now about what's happening with the home test availability. I really want everybody to have home tests, access to them, and because accessibility is a huge issue, and it's a matter of some disparity in the community, differential accessibility to these tests. But it, as I've already said, I don't want to repeat myself, it's just changing everything and leading to the potential for a lot more unreported illness that's out there. And maybe maybe those same people just would have never been tested. And so there's maybe just as much unreported illness.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
now they
Sure,
know it
there's plenty
themselves,
of
but are not.
unreported illness.
Yeah. But anyway, my what I started to say there was that I am not being asked to pursue contact tracing on those self-reports.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes.
But the people who get them are expected to isolate.
Yeah, what's expected is that if you do hear about it, that you advise the person to get a confirmatory PCR
Mhm.
and advise them around isolation, but then stop there and don't start asking them about all their contacts. But to recommend that they notify people they've been close with in the last few days, but there's not a formal and recorded contact tracing process that goes on. Yeah.
So in an ideal world, they would then call all their contacts and say, you better get tested because I've self-tested positive.
Yeah. And personally, I think that what probably we need to move to is, like I was saying before, where we treat it kind of the way we have with flu outbreaks, where there's some well-publicized set of information that's accessible to everybody about, okay, if I get a positive, I should do. In this case, I should isolate. I should call all the people I have been around since 2 days before I started feeling sick and let them all know and tell them to go get tested too. That it's just, I think, not a sustainable in this surge. I don't know that it's sustainable that this case by case by case contact tracing and notification. I don't know that. I already know that the system is falling behind what's happening.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're cutting their losses, I guess.
I think so. They're sort of entering surge mode is what I think they're doing. But I think this advisory on not contact tracing the unobserved home tests is also based on some data around the degree of reliability of those tests.
Right. So there isn't a sort of a website out telling people what to do, but we could certainly develop.
There is. There's the
there
DPH.
Is.
Oh yeah, there's I think we already have it linked. I think you have put it up on our website long ago, the link to DPH guidance on isolation and quarantine.
Oh no, I mean what to do specifically if they have an unwitnessed positive self-test. That you were just saying there should be a sort of information packet out there.
Hopefully it comes in the kit, but I haven't seen. I don't know. I don't know what's in the kit.
That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Would be curious to see the
The
insert
insert. Yeah.
on the test. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see if we can try to get that. Maybe DPH must have that. But meanwhile, what I was thinking is that we could develop a thing that's saying, if you have a self-test and it says positive, here's all the things that you should do. And you could have that as a ready-made response. And so you didn't have to keep telling people the same things over and over.
Mhm. And it could say stuff like, try to get a PCR, notify your healthcare provider.
Mhm.
If you have kids in school, notify the school.
Uh-huh.
Keep your household members at home. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing I'm thinking, Kat, and you might have it later on the agenda, you were talking about the newsletter that's coming up.
Yeah.
It just makes me think that maybe we need to have another notice or information to people just to talk about what's happening in this. I'm just going to quote Arlene, this explosion of cases that seems to be unfortunately coming our way. I don't think we express it that way, but just to increase people's awareness again of what's happening, and just reinforce safety precautions, and also this what to do list that we're talking about in the event that you.
How about this for two reasons? One, these newsletters aren't very timely because there's a long lag between the deadline, which is God, Friday, and the time when it finally lands in people's mailboxes. But what we did last time was give a kind of a brief notice and our website, right? And so just let people know that the website is there, and now that we're having a surge, we're giving more attention to keeping it updated, and that's where they should go for information.
Yeah, I agree. But the other part is, I think, Kat, that probably people in Massachusetts are feeling a little safer than other states and may not quite be aware of what's happening here. So maybe to give them, not to scare them, but to give them, increase their awareness a little bit. I think Arlene has increased my awareness tonight of just, that our situation is getting more serious again.
Right, but again, that newsletter is weeks and weeks.
No,
out.
not the
They
newsletter.
need this information now.
Yeah,
we need it
right now.
in the town.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we should go back to the way we were doing it. So that's fine.
Yeah, I would support going back to the weekly updates about cases if that's the territory that we're heading in.
Yeah, since there are cases. For weeks and weeks and weeks, we had no cases.
There were 0, 0, 0s for a long time. Yeah.
And then including some of that other information, if you're doing at-home tests and
Right. And then we can assemble the information on that and put that on the website too. Right.
Just another. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because when people need it, they're not going to remember it. They're going to have to go find it.
Right.
What were you going to say, Maureen?
I was just going to make another comment that it just seemed to me when you said the number of cases we have in isolation, it just sort of struck me that, as I recall, that's kind of as high as any number we've ever had, Arlene, or am I not remembering correctly?
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So there is some urgency to this.
Yeah.
Okay, in the next day or two, I'll try to put something out. And I'm in the middle of a big household project with a time frame on it. So I don't have a lot of time to be writing stuff, but soon we'll get stuff on the website. And by the end of the week, I think I can get something out in the town announce. As far as the newsletter goes, let's just we'll do just the brief notice reminding people that we're here and that we have a website and they can consult it.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's good.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else we need to talk about tonight or want to talk about tonight?
think there were a few more items that you had in the notes because we're just with Arlene's updates. So,
Well, the other, okay, so
Arbovirus.
we got the arbovirus report. There is a case or two of West Nile virus in Western Massachusetts, but
Right.
not in Franklin and not anywhere near us. I don't think that cause for alarm. We
No.
could mention it. We could mention it in our town announce saying, this is kind of prime mosquito season for West Nile virus. So watch yourself.
I think that's
So
a good reminder too.
Yeah.
And I think that case was in near Springfield somewhere, or Long Meadow, as I recall.
Yeah, I think West Springfield, there was one in West Springfield, and there might have been
Yeah.
another one out this way, but it was not really near us.
No.
the majority are like Middlesex County. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And as far as I know, there hasn't been any AAA.
I haven't seen.
Mhm.
So apparently, instead of having a 3-year cycle, we had a 2-year cycle, for which, thank the Lord. So there's that. I told you about the PFAS testing results already. In connection with the parsonage, and I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Okay.
And my phone is going to die soon.
Oh.
My laptop has already died. My phone is about to die.
And you sound like you need to go to bed.
Yeah,
I think I do.
Garrett said the same thing when I asked him how
I
he felt.
started the
He said he
meeting.
was, yeah, he was already exhausted by then. So let's call it quits. Shall
Let's
we?
do that.
Okay.
All right, everybody.
Joining us.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yes.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well,
Good night, all.
good night.
Yeah, good night. Bye.